back. Okay, it's 6:33. Let's call the committee of the whole to order. Dr. Kincaid.
Thank you, Mr. Natale. We'll go ahead and get started. We'll circle back to Nate once we see that he's up and running. I can't see everyone this time for some reason. I don't know why. Let me see. Oh, wait. Oh, Nate, are you with us? Nate?
Is his microphone turned off on his settings by any chance?
I can't see him. Can you guys see him?
Is he NCM 3333?
Yep.
Yeah, he's on, but
Yeah.
the microphone's off.
Yeah, he's
Oh.
muted.
Okay, Nate, we see you up there, your icon at least, but you're muted right now. If you can unmute yourself, you should be able to go. He did rehearse one time.
The red microphone.
His mic isn't working. He just sent me a message.
Well, we can get, if it works, we can get back to him.
Okay. Well, we'll jump over Nate. We'll let him work on that, troubleshoot on his end, and we will jump in. What's that, Brian?
Eric, he can call. He can call in.
Nate, you hear that? You can call in. There's a number on your invite. In the meantime, while we're waiting for him, let's go ahead and jump into it. Ed, you want to get us started with the 2021 update?
Yep, we'll do. Good evening. Hey, once Nate catches up with us, I do have the files out there in the shared folder that Nate shared with us a bit ago. So in the Fairview Parks and Rec Authority folder, you'll find those files. So for the 2020-21 budget, there aren't too many changes. Alan had asked me to look at 4 scenarios, which I did prepare. And let me present those. Just give me a minute here. So hopefully you can, getting an echo out there.
What's that?
Hey, Nate, is that you?
Yeah, hang on.
If you could mute it real quick.
Or disconnect from the web.
All right, we'll circle back to you, Nate. Go ahead, Ed.
All right, so hopefully you can see my screen. Let me go to this. So what I did is I updated that PowerPoint forecast, the Alan Natale slide, and I'm showing these 4 scenarios. So the 4 that Alan had asked about is 0, which is this blue line coming up from the bottom. I have this expanded just so you can see it a little bit better. Anyway, the light blue line is 0, and then we got 2.4, 2.9, and 3.2. So assuming that those are the increases for 2020, 2021, the next 5 years would look like this. So at 0, you can see the forecast is at 4.08%. And the only difference between these 4 scenarios is I made all the reductions to revenues that I explained last meeting. So about 750,000 in reductions. The one thing that I can't get into the 0% scenario is the full cap projects transfer. It's short by 409,000. Otherwise, 2.4 this next year gets you 3.28 the next 5 years, 2.9 This next year gets you 3.12, the next 5-year period, and then 3.2 right here, which is where the Act 1 index is, will get us just over 3% for the forecast period. So there isn't any other changes to it other than the, I'm taking the proposed final budget, which you're voting on tonight, and just assuming a different tax increase, and then determining in the forecast period what works to maintain the cap projects transfers each year as we go. So it's kind of a trial and error thing where I just continue to adjust the increases to maintain at least the total cap projects transfer that we have based on our forecast. So those are the 4 scenarios. We have not learned yet if there's going to be any kind of federal funding to help support the state budget yet. There is a House bill, which you've probably seen. They're calling it the HEROES bill, passed by the House, and the Senate will be looking at it soon. I'm guessing it won't pass in its current version, that there will be some kind of compromise to that bill before it's passed. Anyway, that bill does include some help for state and local government, so there could be some school district funding in that bill should that pass. So we're going to watch that and see, kind of where that goes. But at least for next year's budget, this is where we stand. We've got the proposed final motion on for tonight. We'll post that on our website. We'll advertise that you will be looking to adopt the final budget on, I believe it would be June 22nd, would be the second June meeting. So that is really what I have for next year's budget.
I have a question, Ed.
Yep.
The budget itself is the same as your last presentation with the 3.2? Or did you knock it down?
Yes, no, it's the same. So let me just jump over there real quick here. Just get down to the budget slides here. So last meeting, I showed you the 3 scenarios. The proposed finals based on scenario 2, which reduces revenues by $750,000. I made these changes down below here. So real estate tax increase to the Act 1 index to 3.2. The NORVA funding holiday, I reduced spending by $100,000, and of course that can hit one of a couple different accounts, and using $336,000 of committed fund balance. So those are the changes there. On the revenue side, this is what I cut. So I reduced the collection rate for real estate taxes. I reduced earned income taxes by 15%. Reduced interest on investments, basic subsidy. I will tell you that most districts aren't reducing their basic ed subsidy in their budgets for next year. I may have mentioned that last meeting. If we get help from the federal government, I think that can probably happen where it'll hold steady at this year's level. Otherwise, I don't see it holding steady. I think it's going to go down. That's why I have it reduced here. And then delinquent taxes down 50,000. So, Alan, those are the changes that we talked about last time, and that's consistent with all 4 scenarios, except for the one exception for the 0%. They can't maintain the full cap projects transfer.
So tonight we're voting on our preliminary budget, correct?
Yeah, you're voting on the proposed final, which it can change in any number of ways with the final budget on June 22nd. So hopefully we'll get some useful information in the next few weeks here that we can incorporate in that budget. I would say by the first June meeting, you're going to want to at least get comfortable with where you want to be with a tax increase or no tax increase by that point in time.
I
And
just
then on
want,
June, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to make sure the message is clear that this is not a final adoption at 3.2. This is a proposed final budget, which will become final upon further vote in June or as modified in June, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Hey, just a couple of pieces of information. Ed might have shared this last time, I don't recall, but right now the governor is saying that he is not looking to reduce basic education funding. Of course, that's up to, it's not completely up to him, but at least in his proposal, he wants to keep the basic education funding the same. And also, we've learned that the state is likely to adopt a 5-month budget this year, followed by a 7-month budget. That's the plan right now, according to what we're getting from PDE and the intermediate unit. So I guess more to come on that. Ed, have you heard any more about that split budget?
I have not. There's still a lot of deliberation that has to happen between the two houses, and of course the compromise with the governor. So I believe, for my take, there's a lot of work yet to be done on the budget. So I don't think they're anywhere close at this point.
Okay. Other questions on budget? So we're not locked into this evening. There is a, or actually there's not a motion. Is there a motion? There's not a motion tonight.
There's a motion tonight for the proposed final. But again, like Alan indicated.
Oh, the proposed final, right.
Yeah, it doesn't, I mean, we can change that. It doesn't lock you into anything. It's a 3.2%, but you don't need to be a 3.2 for the final. So you can be anywhere from 0 to 3.2 for the final.
Yeah.
Because last meeting I think most of us were hoping to see it on the underside of 3, which would be leaning more toward that 2.9, I'm guessing, looking at those projections. But
Yes.
so that, I mean, that seemed to be a kind of a consensus almost. Not that I don't want to speak for anybody tonight, but.
No, I think you spoke that correctly, Pam. But yeah.
No, absolutely. No, that's right. Let me just go back to this slide real quick.
Hey, Ed, is it fair to, just as a general statement to the board, that they're not necessarily, the approval tonight, the vote tonight isn't necessarily to approve a percentage increase. It's to more approve the components of the budget. Is that a fair statement?
I would say, yeah, I think we probably have like 80% of the budget there, and we're going to still change a few things yet before the final adoption. So yeah, I mean, George will tell you that any number of things can change between now and June 22nd. So Pam, you're correct. The board wants to be somewhere at 2.9 or lower. So you could be anywhere between 2.9 and 0 in this range. You know, for example, if you were at 2.4, you get about a 3.3%. But if you got down to say 2%, for example, you would probably be like 3.4, 3.5 for the forecast period.
Would there be any danger of being above the index then in the future, though?
Yes, because
Well,
you're just trying to make up for the shortfall in revenue, as I
Right.
understand
So
it.
we've got to find that balance there where we can.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't cut the budget and you reduce revenue, you're always going to have to raise taxes to make up the shortfall. Is that a correct understanding?
I think that's accurate. I think whatever you build into real estate taxes in next year will help you in future years. So the lower that is, the more you have to make up for it in future years. I think that's accurate. The Equine index is here. It's this line right here. So it gradually works its way up to 4% according to the independent fiscal office. So who knows where that's going to be? We have no idea, but the projection has it going up over time. That'll help us. So if you're at, say, 3.3, adopting a 2.4 for next year's budget, you've got a little bit of room there between the 3.3 and where the Equine index is supposed to be. So that will give you, I guess, a little bit of wiggle room between the two.
This
My
is
ma-
Fran. Can you remind us again, Ed, how much 1% equates to in dollars approximately?
Right. So a 1% real estate tax increase equates to about 170,000 in revenue.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And just from my chair, I would remind everybody that you did pass an Act 1 resolution, what was it, back in December, I think, that you would not go above the index. So you're locked in at or below 3.2 for this year. You can go anywhere from 0 to 3.2. Adopting the preliminary budget merely gives you an opportunity then to display that budget to the public so that they can provide comments. But it won't be until the June meeting when you finalize your budget and you levy your tax millage at that time. You will not be doing that tonight.
Obviously, my main concern is to stay well clear of the Act 1 index with the construction project, not having referendum. So that's obviously as a concern. This has been very well planned out in terms of handling, as Ed said, capital project transfers. So this is where we need to be to handle those capital project transfers going forward into the financing repayment period for the building projects. So that's why I asked for the projections, how they play out based on these different scenarios. I think we're safe anywhere between 2.4 and 3.2, but I think Pam is right. The consensus of the group is to stay under 2.9 or below, and just obviously give it a lot of thought, knowing that as Eric said, there'd be more ground to cover later, depending on where we start this year. So that's all.
Any other questions on budget? There is a transfer on, just one transfer. You can see it's to cover the cost of a piece of phonic equipment. This is used for special ed students, and it's a small transfer. $596 is the total.
Folks, very quickly, then we'll actually leave some time for Nate, assuming we can hear him. But very quickly, the item number 4 is just the annual board approval of the FHS diploma list. If you took the time today to watch the little video that I put out, you'll know that all of our graduates who are eligible to graduate are participating in our ceremony, which we think is incredible. We never dreamed of having 100%, but we have all of them. So that's great. So tonight, you're simply acknowledging that that these students have met the requirements of either the Fairview School District policy or the requirements set forth by their individualized education plan, their IEPs. And I can confirm to you that they have. And Alan and I Alan will make that official on Friday. I'll present the class to him and he will make that official on Friday. And lastly, then on my agenda is personnel matters. We have, all right, Molly, where is it? There it is. We have tonight a resignation from the cafeteria, and we have a resignation of our varsity football coach. By the way, you guys saw that information when we saw it. As a Go Erie article, we did not have a heads up on that, but it is what it is. We're on the look for a new football coach right now, and we'll find somebody. And as we always say, we'll look to upgrade. It's not always that easy, but we will look to do a little bit better there the next time. We also have tonight one additional ESY hire. You've already approved the extended school year teachers. We have one additional one, Mrs. Yatsko, to add to that list. The other folks this evening are new hires, And I would ask the principals to give a little bit of background on them. I've met with all three of these ladies, and they're all ready to roll. I'd like you to know a little bit about them. One is a kindergarten teacher, and one is a first grade teacher. And then lastly, we have a fifth grade math teacher coming to us from the Alexandria, Virginia area. Ben, are you prepared there to introduce Claire and Sarah? Or Julie?
If Ben's not, I'll be happy to. First, we have up Sarah Martz. We're very excited to make her officially a part of our Fairview family. She came to us last summer. She moved with her husband from Nebraska, and she was previously a first grade teacher and had taught kindergarten at one point in her career and second grade at one point as well, and recently moved in. We hired her last school year to be in a 5th and 6th grade classroom long-term at Fairview Middle School for math. And then mid-year, she was able to join us in a 2nd grade classroom long-term. So we had lots of experience with Sarah. She was both, I know Steve wouldn't mind me saying, wonderful in the classroom in both areas and both schools. She did an excellent job on her rounds during our interviews, and we're excited to make her officially part of our Fairview family this fall. So that's Sarah Martz.
And Sarah came in. I'm sorry. Thank you, Julie, for saving my butt. I kept hitting the unmute button and it just wasn't working. But so, and you could carry on, Julie, but Sarah really came in and completely changed a 2nd grade classroom that we were having some behavioral issues in, and we never had an issue after she started in the classroom. So we couldn't be more excited to have her, and she comes very highly recommended.
And then next up, we have Claire Eichner. We're thrilled to have her on. She is new to Fairview, a recent Mercyhurst grad. She had highest recommendations from her cooperative teachers and from her supervisors, and proved to be one of the most energetic, exciting, spunky, and joyful candidates that we had across the board. And we know that she'll not only make kindergarten magical, but she's going to be really successful with all of the things that we've implemented this school year, both before our shutdown and now with online learning. And we think she's going to be a great essential part of our new kindergarten team. So we're equally just as excited to have Claire be our Fairview family after tonight.
And I'll speak for the interview committee. Claire blew us all away. We typically are looking for seasoned teachers, who have a lot of experience, but she came in and from the first interview blew all 5 of us away, and we couldn't be more excited to have her. She's going to make a great addition to that team.
Thanks, elementary. Steve, with Lindsay Stankiewicz.
Yes, good evening. I would like to add Sarah Martz was here for half a year at the middle school. Fantastic. We loved her. So glad to see she found a spot somewhere in the district. But Lindsay Stankiewicz will be joining us in our 5th grade math position. This position was very important to us. It's a critical position, and we feel that we found the strongest candidate. We had a lot of great candidates, which is always exciting. And out of that mix, she was by far the best. Lindsay's from the area. She did go to college at Westminster, and then she received her master's from Edinburgh University. But she did go south, and she has been working in Stafford, Virginia since 2011. And she is currently a math and science teacher at a middle school. We're really happy to have her join our team, and she's very excited. I was just talking with her this morning, and she can't wait to finish out the school year and join us here at Fairview Middle School. She's going to be a great addition to our 5th grade team as well as the math department. So we are thrilled that Lindsay is going to be with us in the fall. She is too.
Folks, I think you know this, but as we go through our interview process, it's a five-step process. with the fourth step being the performance interview. So our committees get a real good look at the candidates presenting to children. We did those this year virtually. It was different. And the last step of that process is a one-on-one. Typically, they sit across this very table with me, and we have a conversation. I did those conversations virtually this year. I can tell you that when you add Carling to the mix here of the folks that we've hired, this is really one of the more impressive groups of hires that we've had in a long time as a whole group. Claire is 22 years old, I think, maybe 23. But man, she really blew us away. She is really poised for her age. She's full of energy. She's really smart. She comes from the Hamburg, New York area, and Mercyhurst said really one of the best that they've had come through the program in a long time. Sarah proved herself with us last year. First person I've ever met from Nebraska, by the way. She proved herself to us last year in a long-term position, just did an amazing job. And she's going to be a nice fit at the elementary school. And then Lindsay Stankiewicz, 10 years experience teaching math at the middle school level. And fifth grade math really needs some help in our district. And we think she's going to be just the right person to turn that around. So 3 terrific candidates for your consideration this evening. We couldn't be happier with the selections. Our committees did a really nice job. Dr. Zona should be commended for that work that he does heading up those committees. And Alan, if there aren't any questions on personnel matters, I'd like to swing back to Nate, if he's there, to give us some information about Fairview Parks and Rec. Nate, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yep. Nate, let me set this up for you just quickly. Our committee talked about the Fairview Parks and Rec back in March. We were going to, actually, it might have been February. We were going to have Nate present in March. I'll let Nate get into the specifics about this, but Fairview Parks and Rec is looking for a financial contribution from the school district to stay afloat. That request has probably become more dire in the last couple of months, as Nate will expand upon here in a minute. So with that, Nate, I'm not sure that you can present your materials in this format, but you can certainly talk the group through it.
Okay. So are you unable to actually see me video-wise?
I can't see you.
Okay,
No,
you can just hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I do have some items that I could present, but I guess I'll hold off on that. But first off, thank you to all of you guys for allowing me onto your board meeting. And kind of a background of this, I've been here for close to 2 years. It'll be September, will be 2 years that I've been in this office. I originally reached out to both the township and the school district in November asking for financial assistance. So before all these closures, we were having some financial issues with essentially revenue coming in, not necessarily expenses going out, but just a change in revenue coming in. And it has obviously compounded itself going through all these closures. The issue with that is that we've just lost our entire spring quarter revenue due to all the closures. Unfortunately, we've been busy doing quite a few refunds to all of our participants for our spring sports or our spring just general programming. So it's been kind of a stressful time for the past few months, anyways. Trying to figure this all out. But to kind of give you some background as to where we're at, and I do have some numbers here and some comparisons for you. I wish I could show you guys, but I'll kind of list out the numbers for you. A comparison of 2018 and 2019. Those are kind of the 2018 is essentially, I started near the end of 2018. So we had a total income of $164,000, a little more than $164,000 coming in, and our expenses were at $166,000, and so a comparison of $2,000 or $2,500, just under $2,500, anyways. 2019, Ed, you might, I don't know if you have any of that or not, but 2019 we had a total income of $125,000. These are rounding numbers, and I'm not giving you the full amount here. And then our total expenses dropped down to 146,000. So we had a drop of $20,000 in expenses, and that's because I realized that we weren't bringing in the amount of money that we were in previous years. There it is. Yeah, that's it. How about that? Perfect. So you can see there, man, Ed is on top of it. This is great. So you can see the comparison there between the 2 years. And kind of going back to that, there's a couple of things that changed there. Why are we not bringing in as much money as the previous year in 2018? Well, the big factor is, I would say, is our Finn swimming program. And before I started here, the Finn swimming program was the lifeblood of Fairview Parks and Rec. I think that was the #1 program that brought in about $20,000 of income for this office. The problem with that program, though, is that it was not a sustainable program by any means, personnel-wise. And that's because every single year we were having to find a new head coach, and it's typically a college coach, and nothing against college kids, but to me, that's not a high quality program that I want to bring in. And so we also had high school kids coaching. Again, not necessarily, in my opinion, a high quality program that I want to offer through the Parks and Rec program and to offer to the students of Fairview School District and Fairview Township. So we brought in PWR Swim, which doesn't necessarily generate as much revenue for us that Finn's does, but it's a way better quality program. It's a USA Swim sanctioned program. All of our coaches are USA Swim sanctioned coaches, so they have to go through a pretty rigorous training to get to that level. And the numbers of participation is a lot different as well. So with Finns, we would average 50 to 60 kids, sometimes even lower than that. But on average, it was about 50 kids that would participate in that program. Now with PWR Swim, we're averaging 70 to 80 kids participating in this program now, which we're reaching a lot greater of a population who's able to work up through the program and get to a higher level that they might want to get to. They don't necessarily have to get to that level, but that's a program that's just going to help build kids up in the swimming world and even potentially help going into the varsity level for the high school. So, that's just one factor of what I think is the big issue here of income coming in. And again, it's just a change of a program here, but I really don't think a Parks and Rec office needs to live and breathe off of one program. It's just unhealthy, in my opinion, unhealthy business, in my opinion. So I'm really striving to make a whole variety of healthy programs that help to sustain this office moving forward. Ed, if you're able to scroll down to expenses then. So with the realization that we're losing money or we're not bringing in as much money, we definitely made some changes as far as expenses go. And you can see, insurance really doesn't change much, unfortunately. I tried, trust me. I went to our insurance provider and I talked to them and I said, hey, is there anything? We went through it with a fine-tooth comb and say, is there anything we can eliminate to reduce our annual cost for insurance? And with the programs that we do and everything that we run through this office, there's just no way that we can change anything in our liability insurance to save money. It just wouldn't be safe on our end. And then, there's really not much that we can change as far as referee fees, and then potentially independent contractors. Now, I'm not sure if a lot of you guys know how our independent contractors work. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background of how a lot of stuff works here before I even started. So independent contractor gets paid. Those are our coaches, our instructors. We pay them 70% of the fees coming in. So some of our independent contractors do pretty well with the amount of fees that come in. Say for like a one-time class or something like that has a lot of kids, they can do pretty well off of a program. Other independent contractors, say like lacrosse or soccer or basketball, those programs that go 3 to 4 months, if you break it all down, they're really not making that good of money off of that 70%. So, and then out of that 70%, any expenses that our programs have, that they get paid out of that 70%. So Fairview Parks and Rec, we take 30% right off the top. I would like to change that, especially for some certain programs, just because I don't think 70% is necessarily the right amount for certain programs. But the problem is telling somebody who's been getting 70% for many, many years that we're going to drop you down to 50% hasn't gone over very well at the moment. So we're still working on that. I'm trying to tread lightly here, especially only being in this 2 years. I don't want to upset some of our really good independent contractors that have been working really hard for us and have been doing a great, great job. So other expenses that we've reduced are, number one, the View that goes out, the magazine that goes out every quarter. We were spending about $2,200 every quarter on that on average, which for our office, that's a lot of money to spend on a quarterly publication. So we worked with our printer and with the school district and with the township to negotiate some new prices per page for the magazine that goes out. And so we've been able to reduce it from $2,200 to, I think right now we're paying about $500 for the publication that goes out. So we're doing our due diligence to try and save money. We've got a new phone provider through VNet. So we were spending like $100 a month on Verizon. Now we're only spending $35 a month on phone. You know, things like that, just little things. And really in this office, I mean, we don't have a huge amount of money that comes in and goes out. But so little things do add up over time. So we're really trying to reduce the amount of expenses that go out, just because we obviously made the realization that the money's just not coming in for whatever reason. And then on another item is that when I did first start working here, I was getting hospitalization pay. The board has taken that out as well to kind of cut back on some costs. And then my office administrator, Lisa, was working 25 hours a week. We've dropped her down to 15 hours a week. So it's myself as a salary full-time position, and then my office administrator, Lisa, who's part-time as well, which I would say she's very much needed in this office to help out, you know, on the books and things like that, and getting payments out, bringing payments in, doing the bank stuff, which saves me a lot of time to go out and recruit new instructors, find new programs, you know, look for new events, things like that, work on projects and stuff like that. So we're starting to make strides to go into the plus, hopefully. And that was what was happening actually in 2020. And I wish I was able to show you guys this, but a comparison of, I don't think you guys can see what on my screen. I can't share my screen with you guys, unfortunately. So I'm just going to kind of tell you guys what was happening. And I'm going to compare 2019 and 2020 months, the first 4 months. So if you guys can just bear with me here. Our total income for January of 2019 was only $4,700, or just under $4,800. January 2020, our total income for that month alone was $8,000. So we nearly doubled that income. And then our total expenses for 2019, January 2019, was $13,000. Our total expenses for January 2020 was $11,000. So, you know, I'm trying very hard to make those strides to reduce costs, but also start making an improvement by bringing in new programs. And really, you know, I can do as much as I possibly can as far as bringing in programs, but there's somewhat of a limit to that. And I can go through again for February. February is a big one. So February 2019, we brought in $4,600. February 2020, we brought in $9,200. I don't even know if I should talk about March or April because that's when we started getting closures. But you can see there was a upward progression there where, we were bringing in good programs. We had signups starting. Things were really starting to roll. And unfortunately, we hit this closure with the pandemic that was happening. And it really kind of put us in a bind. But I felt like 2020, we were really starting to make some moves and get some programs in. So, we're definitely trying our hardest to get programs in and quality programs and high number programs. That's really my ultimate goal, is to bring in programs that can have a fairly large amount of kids that participate or adults that participate, because those are what really help drive up the revenue for us. But I'm really trying to bring in quality programs as well. And the thing is that our programs are very much reliant upon the school district. So we don't have our own facilities at all, obviously. It'd be a whole different case, I think, if we did. I would say nearly 100% of our programs rely on the school district facilities. And we need to use the gym, we need to use a classroom, we need to use whatever it may be, but that's where it comes down to, is that we do rely on the school district tremendously to run our programs. Yeah, we have Pleasant Ridge Park. We do have Avonia Beach and the Brugger House that we can use, but for the most part, our sporting programs, our art programs, our general education programs, they all are housed in the school district. And we greatly appreciate that relationship that we have with you guys. But we do hit a ceiling at some point, because obviously you guys have your programs that you do, and I'm obviously not competing with any of the programs, and I come in and take any time that you guys aren't using for your sports programs or extracurricular activities, you name it. But I just want it to be known that that's really what it comes down to, is that we really rely on the school district to use your space to develop our programs. So but it's a benefit for the students too. So we work through K through 8 for the most part for all of our student programs. I would say nearly 100% of the kids that participate in our programs, are Fairview School District kids. So we do provide a needed service, I think, for the community, for the school district. So, and that's the thing, I think we just keep hitting the ceiling. There's definitely room and potential for growth here, that we have a tremendous amount of it. And like I said, I think we just keep getting that cap just because we can't necessarily use all the space that's available at the school. So we had a really good after school program started this winter, and it was very popular. We had after school art club in the elementary school. We had a drama club, and then we had we have an after school sports fun as well with Mr. Garrity, which is a great popular program. So those programs. Oh yeah, we had Spanish Exploratory right after school. Those programs were really, really great, and we had a lot of participation that I wasn't really surprised by. So even if parents are saying like, oh, that's great, that's after school babysitting potentially, I don't have to pick up my kid till 4:30. That's a possibility for half of them maybe, but there again, you're getting kids into an extracurricular activity right after school, engaging them in some type of educational programming such as art or drama or Spanish, which I got lots of rave reviews about. So there in itself is a really important aspect of Parks and Rec as well. So a lot of people just think of us as like the sports, we do 5th and 6th grade sports, but we're really a lot more than that as far as the school district standpoint goes. So I'm really, encouraged by some of the participation that we have, the growth that we have. We're getting a lot more people involved in our programs. I think it's just, for whatever reason, we've just tripped over a couple of stones at the moment, unfortunately. So, and really, I'm trying to build up a relationship with the school district and myself in this office, and trying to work cohesively between the two of us just to provide that service for the students. Not necessarily trying to compete with anybody, but I just want to make sure that we're putting the right step forward for the students of the school district. And then, on the other note of how we're trying to bring in more revenue is I've been talking to the township on park development, doing different projects that could generate revenue, such as more pavilions here. We're in the works of putting in a disc golf course, which kind of took a back burner. We were getting set to actually start some of the holes out at Pleasant Ridge Park, but with all the closures that have happened, we kind of stepped back from that a little bit because we're looking for sponsorships for each hole and things like that. But a lot of people aren't willing to give out money right now, obviously. So there's some projects in the works, not just on the program standpoint, but on the park development. And when I came into this position and in my interview, I gave them a vision that I had for this job, and there's 5 aspects to the vision that I want to accomplish in everything and any decision that I make here, and those are recreation, nature, education, health and wellness, and community. So any decision that I make or any program that I put out or any project that I try and do, I want to have at least one of those components in that decision. So I do have 6-month plans and goals, and I really want to get this office back on its feet. Unfortunately, we're not at the moment. So within the next 6 months, it'd be nice to have a bit of a cushion. And fortunately, the township was able to give us a financial assistance of $18,000 right at the beginning of the year in January, which helped tremendously, obviously, during this time. We really needed it. We needed it beforehand, but thank goodness we had it right now, because it definitely helped us get through the past few months without getting too terribly low in the bank account. And so that was the proposal, I proposed $36,000 from both township and the school district, $18,000 apiece, to just help give us a cushion for the year, help get us to the point where we can, like I said, have that cushion, accomplish the goals that I wanted to accomplish in the next 6 months, and then get into our 1-year plan of just being financially stabilized, whether that's through programming, project revenue coming in, etc. So, and really having a focus on the programs that have higher participation. The track and field. I'm looking for a flag football program for 2nd, 3rd grade, 4th, and 5th grade as well. So I'd like to potentially see a flag football type of program out here, co-ed. I think that'd be a really, really nice program and well received out here. So, and then I have a 5-year plan and goal as well. So really being self-sustainable, obviously, that's what we want here. I'm not coming out here asking for money, for fun, but I want to make sure that we have a bit of a cushion and just to get through this first year. And so, the goal is to have some pavilions out there, to have some really good programs developed over the next 5 years. I kind of come from an environmental education background. I used to work at Environment Area as the education manager there, and I developed a really cool summer youth program that was well received in the community. And that was one of the ideas I had for the 5-year plan, is to have a type of a summer youth camp called Wilderness Explorer, and kind of team up with the school district and see if that can come into, let that happen over the next 5 years. If there's any way of tying into the curriculum, do that all year round, or even have just a summer camp that's utilized at Pleasant Ridge Park. But that was one of the ideas that I had to kind of, over the course of the next 5 years, to really kind of help out the partnership between the school district and Fairview Parks and Rec. However we can work together to make this a better community for the residents, I'm all in for that. So that's kind of what I'm asking as far as the financial assistance is this year. I don't want to come back next year and do the same thing. Obviously, this isn't fun for me, but right now it's necessary. So yeah, that's what I'm coming at it, is to see if there's any chance. I don't know where or how you guys can do it, but if that's a possibility of being able to to do the $18,000 for this year, that would be very much appreciated. And let me go way, way back to when we even started as a Fairview Parks and Rec and give you a little background from our articles of incorporation. We were actually developed from the Fairview School District Board and the Fairview Township Supervisors. Both entities came together and formed Fairview Parks and Rec Authority. So we're slightly under your umbrella, I guess, because you guys appoint our board and the township appoints our board. We actually applied for a payroll protection plan, but we're deemed ineligible because of how our board is formed and how our board is appointed. So the underwriters at Northwest Bank viewed us as a Fairview Township and viewed us also as Fairview School District. So they did not approve us for that PPP loan, unfortunately. So that's a little background as to how we were formed too.
Wow.
But if you guys have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Nate, let me chime in.
Sure.
I mentioned this to the board last time that, we did discuss this in committee, and the committee
Yep.
wanted to hear from you. And I think you covered pretty much all of their questions in your presentation. I will say from the school district's chair and standpoint that we obviously really value our relationship with not only Park and Rec, but Fairview Township as a whole. And we consider Park and Rec kind of an umbrella of the township.
Right.
And we work closely with Nate, have a great relationship with Nate. We only tell him no about 50% of the time because he comes to us with lots of ideas, and sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. And unfortunately, some of the ones that don't work out are some of the higher money making ones, but for whatever reason, they don't work out with our schedule or our facilities. But George can tell you that we do have a cooperative relationship with Fairview Township. We did check with George on whether or not a financial contribution was permissible, and it is. So
Okay.
we can do that if the board is interested in doing that. I did have a thought,
Right.
and something that I wanted to share with the group. My thought was, we've been getting this contribution from the Erie Otters organization now for a couple of years. For the last 2 years, we have designated those funds to the foundation, which obviously is a great fit. The foundation, though, is doing fine. They're not doing fantastically. They're not swimming in cash. But my thought was, if we could take the 2021 funds and contribute some or all of that money to the Park and Rec as a one-time, cash infusion to get them back on their feet. I think that would be a win-win, because it's not necessarily money out of the district coffers, so to speak. We would be taking away from our partners for 1 year in the foundation, but it would be an avenue for us to make a contribution. And really, that money from the Otters is kind of fitting. It goes right along with the mission of what the township and Park and Rec is all about, along with the Otters. So, George, I hadn't run that by you yet, but Ed and I had talked about it. What would be your comfort level with that type of recommendation?
Well, the money itself comes into the Otters. Those contributions come into the district, and
Right.
we can designate them. So I don't have any problem with the designation if the board is so inclined to go to the Rec Authority. And I think just to give everybody a comfort level with the discussion, Nate is mostly correct about the joint cooperative arrangement that created the Parks and Rec Authority, but he forgot that we still had a borough back then. It was actually formed in February of 1980.
Yes.
And it was between the borough, the township, and the school district. So school district officials were part of the original incorporation. And then for the purposes of assisting financially, Section 706 of the school code gives the school district the power to join with any city, borough, incorporated town, township, et cetera, for equipping, operating, maintaining parks, playgrounds, and play fields, and may appropriate money therefore. So I think that gives you the authority to appropriate any funds to support the Rec Authority.
That was just the otters monies were that was just a brainstorm, just a talking out loud kind of thing, thinking out loud kind of thing. We certainly don't have to go that direction. It was an option though. I'd certainly, Alan, like to hear what the board thinks, if it's something that we feel is appropriate, and if so, to what extent and when.
Derek, do we receive any funds from the programs? I know, like running of the pavilions and things, there's some money received. Does the Parks and Rec pay the district for the use of any of the facilities?
That's a great question, David. We do not. So the use of the facilities, such as like the pavilions, and when he talks about pavilions, Nate was talking necessarily about the pavilions out at the park, not the pavilions here on the district, on the campus. But we do not receive any compensation from Parks and Rec for the use of facilities. That's why we encourage a lot of people to go through Parks and Rec, because it's a lot cleaner if they go through Parks and Rec, because there's not a fee to the district, and they carry their own coverage, insurance coverage that meets our minimum requirements. So no, that's part of our cooperative relationship. We don't take funds from them.
Okay.
Other questions?
Nate, this is Alan Natale. I've got a quick question. Why did your bank, based on your structure, deem you to be ineligible for PPP? Have you perhaps pursued a different opinion from a different lender?
Yeah, that's what I got from our bank manager at Northwest. He was just simply stating what their underwriter said when they reviewed our application and they reviewed our articles of incorporation and saw that our board is appointed by the school district and also appointed by the township. So 3 of our board members are appointed by the township, and then 3 of our board members are appointed by the school district with a student representative for a total of 7. So we also have 1 alternate at the moment now that we just started in 2020. So being that both entities are in charge of appointing our board, they deemed us as being under the umbrella of both entities, so both township and school district, meaning they came back and said if you have financial issues that you need to go to the township and go to the school district, who appoints your board, who essentially oversees you, for financial assistance. So I was trying to go the other route, but
No, I appreciate that.
But it's a good question, Alan. I had occasion to look at the SBA regulations as they relate to PPP loans. And the original guidance that came out, the original final rule that came out in early April from the SBA suggested that government-owned entities would be excluded from participation in the PPPs. And they defined them as where a 501c3 organization was either owned by or controlled by a government entity. I was looking at that for Pleasant Ridge Manor. But since those guidance came out, there was a clarification that came out probably within the last week or 10 days that may cause the rec authority to want to relook at that. I'm not recalling specifically if it had anything to do specifically with nursing home facilities or if it was broader than that. So there might be something out there to look at.
I only raised the question, Nate, and George, because I'm hearing that banks are taking very divergent approaches to PPP, interpreting rules and guidance principles much differently among them. And I'm just wondering and the larger banks being more restrictive. So I'm wondering if you're getting a very restrictive interpretation of your ability to get that PPP, because I guess I'm going to assume, and maybe other members of the board are thinking this, with everything shut down and without any activities ensuing, aren't we talking about essentially funding labor costs until you are able to generate income from activities and programs, which would otherwise be underwritten by a PPP loan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. Like right, at the moment we're planning for some type of summer programming. Obviously, everything's up in the air at the moment, so we do have a schedule in place for summer, whether that's going to happen or not. But we are working towards programming at the moment. It's just unfortunately we just don't know if we can have those programs at the moment.
Have you pursued any kind of online programming? Perhaps.
Yeah, we're actually doing a Zumba program right now online. That was our kind of a test pilot to see how it would work, see what kind of participation we would get out of it, see how the community was receptive to it or not. But yeah, we have, I don't know, probably about a dozen or more folks that are participating in it right now. So we do charge for it. They sign up online for it. When they do the online registration, they get a confirmation email with the link to the class.
How does
So
that?
it's going well. It's going well. So we're going to start pursuing other, say, like art classes and things like that. It's just the trick is trying to get instructors to commit to it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Fran. I have a question for Nate. And you said the township gave you $18,000. Is that the total they gave you for this year, or did they promise more than that? For some reason, I'm thinking there was more.
No, they haven't promised anymore. That was the final that they gave us.
In one installment, or were there two?
One.
Okay.
Nate, I think what Fran's referring to, and I might have mentioned this last time. I was under the impression that in addition to the 18,000, that they weren't going to accept your or they were going to give back the contribution from the rental fees. Is that not?
Yeah. So every year we do have an agreement between us and the township. So we run all the rentals. We rent out Pleasant Ridge Park Pavilion there, and we rent out the Brugger House for events and stuff like that. And a portion of the fees that come in, we do pay the township. So typically we pay the township 60% of those fees that come in. And that's this 2019, it was $11,000 and some change. They did turn around and actually give that back to us this year. So, which again was very much needed at this time. So that was fortunate that they were able to turn around and be able to give that back to us. They just didn't even cash the check or anything. They just voided it out. So,
Fran, that's what you were referring to, right?
Yeah, that must be. So then you're really looking for an additional $7,000. Because if they give you the 11 additional from the rentals, I guess what I'm trying to do here is put some sort of value. I mean, they're great programs. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, they're terrific programs, and I think that they're very much needed. But we do need to put some value on our facilities as well. And if the township, if you're going to split it evenly, 50-50 between the school district and the township, plus our facilities, I mean, it kind of makes up a little bit for what they've given you back in the 11,000, I think. At least good faith.
Yeah, and that wasn't part of the original financial request, just because that's an annual thing that happens. So that wasn't even factored into the request originally. So, and unfortunately, that does hit us every year pretty big. I mean, it's typically about $9,000 to $11,000. So it's not the best system, I don't think, but it was what was set up originally before I started here. And yeah, and I do agree that there is value to the facilities that you provide to us, and that is great. And I try and keep our prices as low as possible for the students and for the community to run these programs. But I think that this is a benefit to the school district, because a lot of these programs, not just our sports programs, are feeder programs for the school district all the way up through the system. So, your arts and the drama and then the sports, to me, they all look like feeder programs and a benefit for the school district. And yeah, we wouldn't be able to do these programs without you guys and without the facilities. But again, I'm also kind of handcuffed on how many programs I can actually do. I'm pretty efficient into talking people into doing programs for us and recruiting people. And I've expanded our programs by more than double compared to when I first started here. When I first started here, our winter programs had about 12 programs. That's it. Now we're averaging 25 to 30 programs. So I kind of keep hitting the ceiling, and it's just facility use, really. It's just what it comes down to. And I appreciate everything that is provided from the school district. But again, I'm very adamant that this is just a needed service to the community, and what makes Fairview Township and Fairview School District one of the best townships and school districts in the county or even in the region. It's just, I mean, we can really expand upon this even more and just make it, what the potential is there. I mean, there's definitely an unlimited amount of potential that can come about the Parks and Rec program through the school district and in the community.
Folks, we won't have an agenda item for this proposal this evening, but if this will give us some time before the June 8th meeting, if the board desires to come up with some kind of a dollar amount or a plan moving forward, if that's something that we would like to do. So we don't necessarily have to discuss that tonight. I wanted you to hear from Nate and have some time to chew on that and think about it and make a decision in early June.
Hey, Eric, can you reach out if we're considering cutting the funds to the foundation? Can you reach out to them and see what potentially might get cut if we do cut?
Yes,
David, I'm happy to kind of talk about that a little bit, if I may.
Sure.
Because I am on the foundation. I've been there for probably 5 or 6 years, I think. And, the mission of the foundation is scholarships for graduating seniors, mini grants for teachers in the classroom, and the student support fund for kids in need in the district. And, although the foundation was not planning on that money the last couple of years from the auditors, I think it's been very much appreciated. And I can say, from a foundation perspective, the big money maker for the foundation this year, the golf outing, is going to be canceled. And the next big money maker after that would be our Distinguished Alumni event. And that too runs the risk of being canceled as well. So I think it would be, if we're interested in going that route, I think it might be wise for the foundation to discuss their budget for the year and maybe just have a quick overview with the board about what they do for your consideration. So I'm happy to answer any questions on the fly, though, if you need me to.
Yeah, and Jim, I was going to say that if the board did want to go in that direction, I wouldn't recommend taking all of those funds. Justin and I had a discussion about this already, and especially because of the cancellation of the golf outing, which generates a good bit of money for the foundation to go back into the schools. I was going to suggest that of that $20,000, maybe we split that and still look at a $10,000 contribution to the foundation, and the other 10, if the board would choose to do so, to the Park and Rec. We have been doing that. Total contribution from the auditors, by the way, is $25,000, and historically we've been giving $5,000 to both lacrosse and water polo. So the foundation has been receiving the lion's share of that, the $20,000. But that's just a thought. The money doesn't have to come from that. The money could come from a number of places in our budget, or even from budgetary reserves, if that were the case.
I think that lacrosse and water polo are important to continue.
Sure.
That we continue to support them. I have a question for Nate. How did you come up with the 36,000? How did you come up with that figure?
Well, before all the closures happened and all of our cancellations, that was kind of our minimum to hopefully break even for the year. Because we're typically, this past year, 2019, we had about a $20,000 or a little over a $20,000 deficit.
And what is your fiscal year?
It's January, December.
Okay, thank you.
That's kind of why I reached out in November originally for both entities to make sure you guys have time to, you know, play with budget numbers and things like that. So I know you guys are July to July. So I wanted to make sure you guys had enough time to at least, and township as well, to at least discuss, you know, any budget possibilities, things like that.
Eric, will we have time to discuss this prior to the next meeting? Or is this it? Your mic's not on, Eric.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. I told Nate that he could present the information tonight and then sort of check out if he wanted, and the board could have a discussion. And or you know, we can do it through. I guess we can't really deliberate through email. Sorry, George. But you could give me ideas at least. But now might be the best time since we're all here. Fran, don't you think?
Sure. I mean, anytime. I just want to know when we would have that opportunity.
Yeah. I think Alan, if you wanna lead that discussion, I think now's the time for the board to decide if this is something they want to entertain, if we want to put it on the back burner, or maybe have Ed brainstorm some accounts that we could kind of pull from district wide.
I think since it's all fresh in our minds and Nate gave his presentation, it was on the agenda for discussion in the committee of the whole. We should have the discussion now, get a straw poll or a temperature of the board going forward, and then leave it up to administration, assuming funding is approved, to find an appropriate way to raise it to whatever level. So I would like to start or follow up on my last comment. I would encourage Nate to pursue other sources, and this isn't to suggest that I'm opposed to the request, but I truly think that there's been a lot of misunderstanding about the PPP program, and based on bank interpretation. And I think there are smaller banks that are taking very liberal approaches to it, trying to, you know, increase, of course, their book of business, whereas the bigger banks are almost dropping the ball on, I've heard, on some businesses. And then there are banks in between that are taking kind of hybrid approaches, cutting requests, things like that. So it's just a word of encouragement to consider talking to some smaller lenders. I'm not sure if there's any money left in the program, but if there is any, something to pursue. As far as the foundation, I'm a former foundation, like Jim, I'm a former foundation board member myself. Obviously, the infusion of cash from the otters was certainly had to have been a windfall, at least in these last couple of years, to expand the programming of the foundation. I think, from my perspective, if this board was supportive of the request to underwrite the losses to the rec program, Parks and Rec, would do it out of some other source. I think that I would imagine that the foundation would be counting on that allocation from the otters to advance and support the programs they run. I would prefer that if there's there are other sources where Ed and Eric can be creative about raising them, that we find those other sources. I'm supportive of the request. I believe that the relationship is a symbiotic one. We have a tremendous working relationship. We do provide a lot of value in our buildings, but boy, their administration of those programs, including not the least of which are middle school athletic programs, are just invaluable. So, considering the size of the request, I would support it.
I agree. I would like to support it as well. But I would also like to see how much money the foundation needs to go forward, what they would expect this year, because I wouldn't want to take away from that, especially with the lack of their fundraiser, the very large fundraisers this summer. So we have to be careful not to hurt the foundation, but at the same aspect, this is a very valuable source of activity for our students.
This is Fran. I would be in favor. I mean, I definitely would like to try and support them, but I don't think we can go to the extent of the 18,000. I would be willing to give them a little bit from the Otters money, maybe as an example, up to $5,000, and find the rest of the money elsewhere. And for Nate to get a little more creative, maybe even if it's explaining to the instructors that this is a tough year and instead of 70%, we can only give 60%. And that might go back to the 70% again next year. And then also to try and look for some money elsewhere within our budgets. I don't think we can go the 18,000 now. I'd be willing to go up to 10, 5 of it coming from Otters money.
Hey, Eric, a question on the Otters money. Is that guaranteed by a contract? Because it's very possible the Otters won't play next year.
David, that's a good point. It's guaranteed. That contract with the Otters is an annual contract. So we've gotten it the last 2 years. And you're right, that is for them to attend school in Fairview. So if they're not playing and they're not in the U.S., they likely won't be attending school. So that's a really good point.
Or if we're doing virtual school for our own students, why would they attend our school virtually?
They probably wouldn't, David, because they probably would stay. Most of them are from Canada, and they would probably stay in Canada. So you're right. That contract, if there's no season, there probably isn't an Otters contribution this year. I can tell you, I mean, finding, for Ed to find 10, 15, whatever the number is in whether it be budgetary reserves or another account wouldn't, that he could do that in a couple of minutes. We have those monies set aside for emergency district. Not that this qualifies as such, but we could certainly come up with those kind of funds if the board wanted us to explore that. Ed, any comment on the location of that money?
Eric, we do have 69,000 sitting in budgetary reserve for this current year. So the funds are available there to make a payment from. So that's one option. I really haven't looked at any other options at this point. We're looking at a negative variance for the year. So I don't see balances available in other accounts, but we can certainly look around.
We rarely dip into budgetary reserve. I mean, occasionally we'll have to make a purchase that wasn't accounted for at the beginning of the year, so we dip into that. But it's pretty rare that we ask the board to fund something from that account.
Hey, Eric, is there a history of this before in the past? We helped out? No? Okay.
No, we haven't. And Nate's right. I mean, he hit the nail on the head. The Finns program was the cash cow for a long time. That program just churned out the kids but it also it was probably our most, well, with the exception of the drama performance that we had here, it was probably our most problematic program in terms of the facilities and oversight and supervision, especially in the locker rooms and things like that. John and his crew were constantly repairing things and flooding the bathroom and the things that they did over there. But it just didn't have the best supervision and instructors. And the new Power Swim program is a much better program. It's just taking a little bit longer for it to kind of get its feet, if you will, and get more people involved. I think it will be more successful. And Pam, I know you have some experience with that with your own children. It'll probably be more successful than Finns at the end of the day, but it just needs a little bit of time to sort of make a name for itself. But no, Jim, we've not had to support the Park and Rec in any way, shape, or form, at least in the last 14 years that I'm aware of, and George probably before that, right?
Yeah, I'd have to say I don't recall ever having the district approve a contribution to the authority. That goes back 30 years anyway.
I can tell you that Alan was exactly right with his comments about the middle school programs. We do not run 5th and 6th grade programs for basketball, soccer, those sorts of things. Our programs start at grade 7 when they're PIAA sanctioned programs. So they are our feeder program. Students do pay a fee to those. They have uniforms. The foundation, I'm sorry, the Park and Rec pays the instructors. All we do is provide the facility for that. So they are important programs. We would have to find a way to run those programs if we didn't have Park and Rec.
I would be supportive of finding some money within the district to do it. And it's not because I don't think the foundation can survive without it, because I know they can for sure. But just based on David's comments that, we never have counted on this money before. We've never budgeted it in. And I think even for this situation, maybe we shouldn't count on it. But I would be supportive at a level of about 10 or 15,000 if it's available.
I guess this is Eric. I would be supportive of it because I see the value in the programs. I would just want to make certain that we didn't set a precedent that could never be reversed, and we don't want to reinforce a program that ends up costing the district money without being responsible. And I don't mean to suggest that they're not responsible, but I just need to make sure that we as a district can afford to do this and that it's an appropriate step. But I do see the value in the programs. Without those, I'm not sure what our soccer or other programs would look like. So I would be supportive as long as we can afford it, I guess.
I think it's fair to say that Fran makes a really good point. Our facilities account for something for sure. But if you look at all of our other programs, we're paying multiple coaches for every sport, middle school basketball, middle school boys and girls basketball, volleyball, et cetera. We're not necessarily paying for that. These are more self-funded programs. So Eric, I agree with you. They're invaluable programs. My recommendation certainly would be to support in some way, shape, or form. And maybe the auditor's money was just a thinking out loud kind of thing. But the money is in budgetary reserves. If that's the route we want to take, we just need an amount to make as an agenda item for June. So maybe that's where we are, Alan, talking about an amount. It sounds like you have the majority supporting that.
I mean, I guess as a community member, my concern is what's the alternative?
Right.
And the alternative is what happens if we say, all right, we can't do this. The Parks and Rec program collapses, or I guess I'm not sure where it would go from there. Would it have to be rebuilt from the ground up then?
Possible.
This is Alan again. I agree. I think there is a significant risk to the programs being lost. You're talking about programs that have been in place a long time. They feed our PIAA programs. I think it's if we're going to support it, in my opinion, if we're going to support this request, it be at the amount requested, and mainly because I think that there was thought put into it. And it was an amount that was actually put together before the shutdown. And also that our other parent of this entity, the township, not only responded in kind, but also waived their collection fees for their facility fees. So went even beyond the request, considering the dire straits. So, we have it in reserve. It's not something we have to go searching for. It's an amount of money that appears measured to the purposes for which it is requested. My only thought to Nate was, since these activities seem to be suspended, it appears then, the support would be for payroll and not necessarily for programming. That to that end, I would obviously encourage pursuing other sources, whether it be other grant writing or if PPP doesn't work out for you. But I don't like the message being sent that we'll give you 10 but not 18, we'll give you 15 but not 18, when our other parent organization of this entity and this longstanding relationship not only stepped up but also went beyond. So that's my opinion.
This is Fran. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Fran.
I just want to say that they did give the extra 11,000 in rental fees back again, but that they don't provide any facilities. And if the number of 36,000 came up before the shutdowns, which it did, then it sounds to me like you really need, $7,000 more because you got 29,000 from the township and still facilities from us, but to also pursue volunteer instructors. There may be some out there who would be willing to do it for gratis, and you keep 100%. I mean, just in light of the year that we're having right now.
Fran, just a clarification, because that might have been confusing. The facility fees that the Park and Rec reimburses, those are actually township-owned facilities. So the township owns Pleasant Ridge Park. The township owns the Brugger property. The Park and Rec simply provides the rental application and collects the funds for the township, and then gives the township 60% of those rentals. They keep 40% really just for the management, like property managers, if you will. And so that was the 60%. That was the $11,000. The township supervisors basically said, "Hey, it's our money, but we're going to let you keep it this year, in addition to the 18,000." So Alan is right. They went, well beyond the initial request of 18,000 with that additional level.
But by giving it back or allowing them to keep it, it's really giving them an additional $11,000.
For sure, absolutely.
They wouldn't have
That
had
is true.
otherwise.
Well, that is true, but also they have no revenue right now either. So I think that, it's probably a wash as far as that goes. Yes, they may have gotten more money, but they're also down more money. So I don't know that affects the amount of money that they completely need. I don't think that gives them $11,000 less that they need at the end.
Oh, that's not the impression I got from Nate, that he thought he needed 36,000, 20,000 to break even. And the additional 16 was just to help out. Is that correct, Nate?
This is Brandon Ornhold. I'm the chair of the Parks and Recreation Authority.
Okay.
That $36,000 was prior, and what the township was able to do by giving us that the Parks rental revenue back, that was to help us in this time. So the $36,000 was prior to any of this going on. And as Pamela said, she was correct in the timeline of those financial needs and reimbursements. Does that make so? The way Pamela laid it out was correct. Our needs would have had gone up. We haven't been able to quantify them to this point because that period is still ongoing. Because as March, April, and May here in June go, we're having decreased revenue, and that was the township's response to the current period. Does that make sense?
It does, but are you having decreased expenses as well?
Correct.
Well, maybe what we need is similar to what Ed did, is kind of a best and worst case scenario to kind of project what might happen, because it sounds like we're all willing to give something. It's just question is it even going to be enough, right? If we give the full amount they're asking now, how long will that sustain them with minimal revenue? And I think the concern is repeated requests. So maybe we need to have them take a step back and give us some projections like Ed did with her own budget.
I think another concern is, and I don't, I think it's possible that I don't understand the budgets well enough to comment intelligently about this, but it looks to me like, in this case, the school district has revenues declining, so we're raising taxes to make up for revenues which may or may not be declining. But in this case, the township, it seems like they're not having that problem where their budget's not increasing. But I don't want the school district to be the one who says, all right, we're going to pay for this, and we're also going to pay for that, and then we're raising taxes to do this. I just don't want to be the only entity in Fairview that's taking on these responsibilities.
So Ed, can you just show us exactly where this is going to affect us, I guess? I think that's seems to be a concern from us is, is it coming out of our reserves? Where will this affect us? Is there any long-term to us with that?
Well, I don't think long-term, Pam, but I think short-term, at least for the 1920 school year, the way we're going to finish up, I projected we're going to be running a deficit of about 128,000. So we're not going to be impacted too much on the revenue side. We did have some savings. I showed you guys a detail of the impact of revenues and spending. I have it up on my screen right now. I can show it to you if you'd like to see it, but overall, a deficit of 128,000. Whatever payment we'd make to the Parks and Rec Authority would just increase that deficit, assuming it does become a deficit. Now we're making a lot of assumptions about those revenues and spending numbers, where they're going to finish the year. But my take on it right now is we'd be increasing that deficit by whatever we'd spend and contribute to the Fairview Parks and Rec Authority.
Would there be any benefit to paying them in installments versus one lump sum?
I think it might be good just to see a projection, maybe for 2020. If there's no revenue at all for Parks and Rec, how long will they remain solvent? And just maybe get a little bit of projection there before we decide to commit. And I also think Alan's point about the PPP and maybe trying with another bank or just giving it another shot is valid, provided there's money there. But it would be good to just get an idea of the revenue stream. If there's no revenue, how long Parks and Recreation will survive. So that's my thoughts.
Jim, you make a good point. I think Nate needs to go back and look and see what if the fall season was lost completely. Let's just say the Parks and Rec Authority is not able to run a program for the fall. What happens in that case? What does their financial picture look like? And I think that's kind of where David was going to, is kind of best worst case scenario kind of thing.
Hi, I can actually provide some comment. Again, this is Brandon. I'm the chair of the Parks and Rec Board. Again, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but the last in regards to our residuals, any savings was around, we had gone from about over within the last time period, about from $80,000 to $40,000 in our residual savings, which would be anything that we could have to keep it going with no revenue coming in, and with our expenses each month at approximately, the way he was stating, $8,000 to $10,000, it would give us 4 to 6 months. Just to give a ballpark. Again, that could go one way or the other, but just so that you guys have an idea of the gravity of it.
And Brandon, of that 8 to 10,000 per month, roughly, is that mostly salaries?
A lot, yeah. 8 to 10. Probably 60 to 70% of it, and then insurance cost and different things like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, Eric, this is Kelly. And I don't know what the school year is going to look like. I'm sorry. I think I just lost my voice. With the school like in the fall. And I don't know what the kindergarten numbers look like, but at some point we were looking at possibly adding on to the elementary school, and one version would be 10 grand. And we were struggling with that 10 grand if we added it on to the kindergarten wing. Am I remembering correctly from like 2 years ago?
I'm sorry, you lost me with the amount there. 10.
There were different estimations of how to add on to the wing if our kindergarten numbers went up.
Right.
And I believe if it wasn't last board meeting, it was the meeting prior to that. I really apologize for my voice. I don't know where it went. That the numbers were up so far, but we won't know till further. And no one knows whether anyone will be in the building or not.
Right.
But we were talking about approximately 10 grand for building a new pod or a new area onto the kindergarten if the kindergarten numbers went up. Is that correct, to the elementary school?
Yeah, where we left things, Kelly, with that was we had flirted with the idea of a expansion of the existing K-pod, but where we left things, I think, was with the additional pod, which was, and that was about a $3 million project.
Okay.
Right, Ed?
So
3 million?
we have that in the ball field, and we also have the high school renovation, and we also have 2 roofs, and we have a track and a football field. I just want to make sure I'm remembering everything from the last 2 years. And
You got it all. Yeah.
And first of all, I highly respect Brandon. So Brandon, if you're there, I just want to say hi and give my love to your family. And I think it's very important. I think everything's very important. I just want to see where we are, because a lot of people aren't having income and they don't know if it's going to be in the fall. They don't know what's going to happen next year. There's a lot of small businesses that are just eking by skeleton staffs. They don't know if they're going to make it, if they're going to go under. I know that because of the field that we're in. I just don't know what's going to happen. I don't think anyone does in a year. So what are we really looking at paying totally, from high school to the field, to the roofing, to the 2 roofs that we need, and the pod, as well as teachers' salaries that we've just, added to the pot.
Yep.
Kelly, you're hitting on 2 different budgets. So the capital projects you've listed, you hit most of the big ones. So the high school renovation, the elementary pod, the roofs, the track, and so on. Those are the major project items, and those get paid from capital projects. So we've got funds set aside for those things, and we also have a timetable and phasing we're looking at for doing those projects. The operational side, the general fund is paying, wages and benefits and that kind of thing. That's what we're debating earlier tonight about the tax increase and how we're going to pay for those things. So those are 2 different budgets, and I think you're right. You're right the way you explained the capital project side of it.
Thank you, Ed.
I think what I hear folks saying is, just to kind of summarize and bring the discussion to a close, what I hear folks saying is we're supportive of the programs if they're going to be available to us next year. And there's still a question mark as to whether or not they're going to be available. So I think at this point, since we have a couple of weeks before you have to entertain a motion, let's allow Nate to work with Ed on what Jim said, looking at a scenario next year of what does it look like without summer and fall programs, and how long can the Park and Rec sustain itself in that situation. And then we'll bring that back to the board. Actually, we'll update the board in a week or so, and then have it again on the committee of the whole for discussion, and leave an agenda item blank for you to fill in the blanks if you choose, or we can scratch it at that point. So let's let Nate work with either Brandon and Ed on that, and come back with a recommendation to the group, and we'll have some time to chew on it. And you'll have time to ask some questions in between now and then too. And you can forward those to me, and I can pass them on to Nate. We talk regularly.
That's a great idea.
Nate, thank you for your time tonight.
Yep.
Brandon,
Yep, thank
thanks
you
for
guys.
jumping in. We appreciate you being here.
All right, thanks everybody.
And Alan, we've gone over personnel matters, so that wraps up committee of the whole. If you want to take a look quickly at your consent agenda for this evening, unless there are other questions for committee of the whole.
Anyone have any questions for Dr. Kincaid on committee of the whole agenda items? Hearing none, we'll move on to review of the public board meeting and our consent agenda items. Under business operations, we have minutes of board meetings, budgetary transfers, bills payable, treasurer's report will be given by Ed separately. So we have 1, 2, 3. Anyone want minutes, budgetary transfers, or bills payable separated from consent? Hearing none, move on to committee reports, committee of the whole. Consent agenda items, we have fund balance plan 2018-19. We have proposed final budget 2020-2021. Again, caution on that based on our discussion this evening. It's not a final adoption. FES architect contract HHSDR for additions, alterations to Fairview Elementary. Remember, we talked about that last time, about just getting them started on design work. And we have the high school diploma lists, A, B, C, and D. So under committee of the whole, anyone want any of those consent agenda items separated? Hearing none, move on to education policy. Purchases over 2,000 is the only one for Mrs. Bryant. Budget and finance, we have consent agenda items including 2021 lunch prices, service provider evaluations, ML schedules and work order renewal, copier bid, ECA supply quotes 2021, real estate installment payments and penalty resolution. If you reviewed that resolution, you'll note that the installments were expanded based on our last discussions. They were expanded, I believe, to 4 or 5, and then the penalty was removed if as long as all taxes were paid by the end of the year. And then so that's A through F under budget and finance. Anyone want any of those separated from consent? Hearing none, personnel matters will stand alone. That should actually, I think, be Mrs. Sobin's motion to read personnel. And that's it. So anyone have any questions or comments about the agenda before we go into the public board meeting? If you would then, please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'd also like to have another moment of silence. We did lose another community member to COVID this past week. And just a moment of silence for the loss of that person in our community, and all those who have suffered loss from this pandemic. Thank you. Okay. Any public comment on agenda items this evening?
We have not received any, Alan.
Okay. Hearing none, we'll move to consent agenda items under business operations. I move board approval of the following consent agenda items for business operations. 1, minutes of the board meetings, budgetary transfers, and bills payable.
Second, new.
Roll call vote.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Liccardi,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Sobin, Yes. Gotcha. Mr. Natale.
Yes. Mrs. Sobin, Treasurer's Report?
I move board approval of the treasury report for April 2020 as presented, as well as the Capitals project report, the cafeteria report, district retirement benefit account, and the high school and middle school activity accounts.
We'll have to turn to Ed for a summary of those reports.
Yes, thank you. So the reports presented for the period ended April 30, 2020 for the general fund revenues year to date, 24,799,000. Expenditures year to date, 21,842,000. Cash and investments total for, or the balance rather, at month end, 8,407,000. Investments for all funds at month end, 19,177,000. Capital projects fund balance, 9,896,000. For the district retirement benefit account, the balance at month end, 746,402. For the cafeteria fund, year-to-date revenues, 549,869. Expenses, 558,023. And the last report is for student activities. The middle school balance, 2,454. And the high school, 51,144.
Thank you, Ed. We have a motion from Mrs. Sobin. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Roll call vote?
Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
Mrs. Liccardi.
Yes.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mahoney.
Mr. Mahoney, yes.
Mrs. New.
Yes.
Mrs. Sobin.
Yes.
Mrs. Bryant.
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Sobin. Moving on to correspondence. Recognition of visitors. I'm not sure who's with us this evening. Anyone who's online with us now wish to be recognized and share any comments with the board? Hearing
Ellen,
none,
I
we'll
just-
move to committee. Oh, go
Ellen,
ahead.
this is Kelly. I don't know if it's appropriate or not. I just found something online that might be something going back to the Parks and Rec. I'm looking at Cambridge, Massachusetts right now and looking Harvard actually, because they're a nonprofit, they don't have to pay taxes and they contributed quite a bit, but they also pay for the Parks and Recreation. And I'm wondering if there's any colleges around here that would share in part of the Parks and Recreation for who eventually will be their student body.
Well, that's a great point. I'm sure Ed and Eric will pass that along to Nate to pursue. Thank you, Kelly. Okay, moving on to committee reports. The Fairview Board of School Directors met remotely as Committee of the Whole on May 4th, 2020 at 6:32 p.m. Board members present were Mrs. Bryant, Mr. Farrar, Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Liccardi, Mr. Lyons, Mr. Mahoney, Mr. Natale, Mrs. New, and Mrs. Sobin. Also in attendance were Attorney Joseph, Dr. Kincaid, Mr. Barnes, Dr. Zona, Dr. Lane, Mr. Bell, Mr. Farringer, Mr. Herring, Dr. Horn, Mrs. Skelly, Mr. Neese, Mr. Fricchetti, Jill Bridgen, Carol Elliott, and Laura Jones. Committee of the Whole. Consent agenda items. I move board approval of the following consent agenda items for the Committee of the Whole as presented. The Fund Balance Plan 1819, Proposed Final Budget 2021, FES Architect Contract HHSDR, and the High School Diploma List.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Mrs. Liccardi.
Yes.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney.
Yes.
Mrs. New.
Yes.
Mrs. Sobin.
Yes.
Mrs. Bryant.
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes.
Oh.
Mr. Hayes. I'm
Oh.
sorry I missed you. Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. Thank you. Moving on to Education Policy Committee. Mrs. Bryant, looks like you have one motion.
Yeah, I can't find it on my computer. I'm sorry. Eric, can
That's
you
okay.
read it?
I'll move it for you. It has to be a board member. Purchases over 2,000, 2021. I move board approval of the annual purchases over 2,000 for the 2021 school year as presented.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Sobin,
Yes.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Liccardi,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Bryant. Okay. Thank you for trying. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Alan.
Budget and Finance Committee, Mrs. Specht and Mrs. Sobin.
I move board approval of the consent agenda items for the Budget and Finance Committee as presented. 2021 lunch prices, service provider evaluations, ML schedules and work order renewal 2021, copier bid 2021, ECA supply quotes 2021, real estate installment payments and penalty resolution.
Second, New.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Sobin,
Yes.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Liccardi,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. You can go ahead and read that next one too, Mrs. Sobin.
I move board approval of personnel matters as recommended and are read by the superintendent and as identified on the personnel list to be approved, and with the stipulation that the positions be filled only if the program or activity is to be conducted as determined by board action.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Sobin,
Yes.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Liccardi,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Sobin. Okay, moving on to reports. IU5 liaison, Mrs. New.
Big news, if you haven't heard, Dean Maynard submitted his resignation as executive director. He will be completing his contract on October 8th or 9th, it is, when that's up. So he's retiring. He's wants to pursue some other options in his retirement. So there's a position open there, and we'll be looking to fill that.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. New? Hearing none. Legislative liaison, I do not have a report tonight, but I do want to thank Ed and Eric for keeping an eye on things in Harrisburg, waiting anxiously for budgetary planning from Harrisburg for next year. Tech School, Mr. Mahoney, any report tonight?
Yeah, Mr. Richard Emmerich from Fort LaBeouf, the superintendent, has been appointed superintendent of record for 2021. Thank you to all districts who approved the 2021 budget, and their design work continues on their remodel plan.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mahoney. Any questions for David tonight? Thanks again. Solicitor's report, Attorney Joseph.
Yeah, you've already voted on a number of things that I've been working on, including the architect's agreement, the real estate resolution, and a few other things. We have a legal ad going out for the preliminary budget, and we added some language in there to account for our COVID-19 stay-at-home business. So we've got that all taken care of. But we continue to stay on top of where we're going with schools, even as we approach the summer, as we get into the fall. So good luck to everybody.
Thank you. Okay, administrative commendables.
Yes, thanks, Alan. I will tell you, the high school administration is not online tonight. They are still over at the high school wrapping up some graduation things. I did get a message from Dr. Lane that he wanted me to share just a correction. When I say we had 134 eligible seniors, those were the seniors who elected to participate. Every year we have a handful, a really small number of seniors, just for whatever reason they don't want to walk across the stage. They don't want to take part in the ceremony. It could be out of anxiety. It could be out of other commitments. We don't really ask necessarily, but there were 5 students who we knew way back weren't going to participate. So there were 139 in the class, but of the 134 who we expected to be at the ceremony, they're all participating this week. So it is a lot of fun. We've gotten some really good feedback. You heard Alan's, if you were on here earlier, you heard Alan's feedback about his experience today. We've gotten so many emails today from parents who participated in that and are just thrilled with the way things went. So really, what a great job the high school staff has done. Both Mr. Bell, Dr. Lane, Ms. Millay, the senior class advisor, as well as the secretaries in the office there, Anne Marie and Alyssa, who have been supporting that. Really well executed. And the custodial staff made sure everything was wiped down. Alan, I'm sure you got up there and smelled the disinfectant because they were up there doing it in between every student tonight just to make sure that everyone was safe. So I know Dr. Lane would like me to pass his thank yous along to that staff as well. So that's it from the high school. We'll move to the middle school. Mr. Farringer or Mr. Herring? I don't see Steve, Mike.
Yeah, Mr. Farringer had to step out, so I will handle that. Good to see everybody. He sent me a few items, and I will share with you. We are currently conducting each week, we'll call them team meetings. We're meeting with each grade level team and specials team to discuss kids and issues that we may be running into. I met with a merged group of committees today. I had a couple of my committees, one called the connectivity group and the other one called the beginning of the year team. And we are looking at what the fall could look like. We're kind of trying to prepare for any, possible events. And the big discussion today, well, there was two big points to the meeting today. First, are there some little things we can do in the last 2 weeks to make the kids feel connected to? Maybe some discussion boards or, maybe some sort of postcards in the mail, just something to let the kids know we're still thinking about them. And it's, we want to do a connection with them. But I think even more importantly, we came up with a pretty massive list of things that we as teachers and administrators feel like we need to teach these kids if and when this happens again. We could be with the kids for a little while in the fall and we may run into the same kind of situation. And we have learned a lot that there are some things that we would have never thought to teach the kids about proper messaging and things of that sort because they're struggling with it a little bit. So we created a list of things that we want to work on with the kids to kind of help that in the event that this continues. We started a virtual spirit week this week. If you get a chance to look at Schoology, today was Mustache Day. They didn't pick it for me, but I did participate in Mustache Day today, so you may enjoy that. Scheduling is almost completed for the year, so it's kind of nice. We've been able to do some of our summer jobs, knowing that the summer is going to be very different in preparing for whatever's thrown at us in the fall. So we're trying to get a lot of things off of the list that would normally be summer jobs and getting that taken care of. Other than that, I just can't be prouder of the middle school kids and the middle school staff. I am doing a lot of behind the scenes work. I'm looking at teachers' modules. I have a lot of communication going on with kids. I just could not be prouder of all the adapting that we have done, I would say even as a district, but I can speak specifically for the middle school in how teachers are trying to utilize Schoology and how they're trying to improve their skill sets and how kids have adapted to this. And it's been frustrating for them. They want to see their teachers. They want to be face to face, but they are hanging in there. We've only got a couple weeks to go. We're trying to give them lots of positive messages, but I just could not be prouder to be part of this district right now. It has been just a great learning experience for all of us. So thank you, Dr. Kincaid. That's the middle school report.
Thanks, Mike. Mrs. Skelly?
Can you hear me? Am I?
Oh, Dr.
Dr.
Horn, I didn't
Kincaid,
see you on there.
Oh,
There you are.
I am. My internet is acting a little funny here, but I'm on by phone. Hey, I just wanted to kind of echo what Dr. Kincaid said in the video, just applauding Ryan Bookhammer for all his work on this STEM activities for all the grades at the elementary school. We had drop off, and we probably had a good 85% of the people pick up stuff on Friday and on the Monday before. The weather was not kind to us as we had to stand out in the pouring rain, but it was a good turnout, and so far we've had lots of positive feedback on those activities. We are going to be doing something that is a little different. Students at the elementary school, and I think at all grade levels, will be keeping their iPads at home for the summer, which is going to enable us to really work on pushing out some summer learning that we hadn't been able to do before. But previously we've done packets, but we're going to be able to push out some stuff just to keep kids engaged over the summer. So we're very excited about that. We're also looking at enhancing our summer reading program, which Angela Gerber does through the library, but also doing some highly encouraged readings over the summer for the different grade levels, just to keep kids engaged. And Julie, is there anything you want to add?
The only thing I'd like to add is through all of the STEM projects that we gave away, we did have a unique opportunity to see so many of our kids and their families pass through as they quickly drive by, and we hand them their kits. And it was just a nice reminder about how, our relationships and our connectivity have the most impact on our students. And we had so many parents that went through that said, how much we miss you, our kids miss you, the kids are saying that. And we even had one that is, been through us for so many years say, we really love you guys. We hope you know that. Like, we don't just miss you, we love you. And that was just so touching and meaningful in that moment. And it was such a great reminder. And I've been sharing that with our staff that, we're so grateful to be where we are and to have been in the place that we have been set up to be as successful as we could be in this scenario. But at the core of what makes our staff and our school great is really that connectivity. And despite the odds, the silver lining in all of this, that still shines through. And I'm so proud of all of our staff and all of our administrative team, because that is the core of why we do what we do. And I think what makes our district great. So that was just a wonderful reminder of the week.
Thanks, Jules. Before I get into my items, I asked Justin just to give a real quick summary. The foundation and the district have teamed up to do something really cool, and with serving some dinners to families. And I asked Justin if he could just talk about what we're doing there, because he is sort of spearheading that as the liaison of the administration.
Yeah, and a lot of credit to Steve too, because Steve started a program with Sneaky Pete's to provide some meals for families. And then at our foundation meeting, we felt the need to better promote the program. So we took a little bit more control of the program and put our own spin on it. So we wanted to support local business, but also support local families. And the foundation committed to start with the Livonia Tavern, to donate $250 out of our student support fund, and ask for $250 of matching donations. And then we would go to Livonia with that $500. Jackie would put together meals. We would get lists of kids, and then we would go out tomorrow night and deliver those meals. So our goal was $250 match. And as of this morning, we had $1,300 donated. So
amazing.
It's almost too much money for tomorrow night. But what we're going to do is Steve touched base with the cakery. and then we have a message out to the meetup and Sabos. So we're going to take the next 4 weeks. It looks like we'll, have more than $500 tomorrow night. So we were thinking somewhere around $700 tomorrow night to Avonia. Jackie's going to prep meals, and we're going to deliver those out to families. So it's just been a great response. Didn't expect this kind of response, but our initial hunch was to go with 3 or 4 weeks, 3 or 4 restaurants, but it looks like we could expand that even more. So thank you for anybody who's donated. If you didn't donate, you can go to the foundation website and donate. They have a PayPal link, and you can just kind of say, make a note of what your donation is for. So anything helps.
Thanks, Justin. Just a couple of quick things. I had lunches and dinners on my agenda to talk about tonight. Justin talked about the dinners. Just want to say again, I know I say this every meeting, but I'll probably say it every meeting through the summer. Our lunch, our cafeteria staff has just done a phenomenal job. They're amazing ladies that come in every day, and they're really on the front lines. They see all those vehicles and all those families that come through, and they're serving hundreds of meals per day and doing a really nice job at it. And I want to keep reminding them how important they are and publicly mentioning how important they are to us. Looking at the 2021 school year, I want the board to know, I want the community to know that we're on top of it. We're following guidelines very closely from PDE and from the Department of Health. We're hoping to be back in school. And, Pedro Rivera, the Secretary of Ed, we met with him last week virtually. He told us that, his plan is to have us back probably in some type of a hybrid approach. And so we're working on that. We're talking about those things right now as a district. If you watch the 10-minute video that I put out today, I don't want to disagree with anything that the principal said today, because I do think under the circumstances that we're doing a pretty good job of handling things right now. But I think we can do better. And I think that it's funny because we said from the beginning, back in March, we said, March and April aren't going to be bad, but May, it's going to get tough and it's going to get old, and people are going to have had enough by that point. And you know what? It's May 18th and people have had enough. This is not what they signed up for. This is not what they want. And we're doing the best we can, but we need to do better. And so if this continues into next year, we are committed to absolutely doing a better job with some more video type instruction. Brian Junker is sitting with me here tonight, and he and I have had conversations about, expanding our internet capacity to make sure that we can do that, bringing teachers in to actually do video lessons or live lessons and having kids watch them. That's what I think our community expects of us. They expect us to be on the cutting edge. They expect us to, our school taxes here are high for a reason. You get a really good education, and we need to provide that. So as good a job as I think we're doing, I know that we can do better, and we're committed to doing better. And we will absolutely make that happen for the 2021 school year. One other thing that I mentioned in my video, and I don't want to go on about this a whole lot, but we had a neat, something happened this weekend where we had a couple of used bicycles donated. And I put a message on Schoology that they were available if anybody wanted them. And I had 4 messages from families within the first 2 minutes. And the first message that I got, I loaded the bikes in my truck and I took them to deliver them. So I'm actually on the road delivering these bicycles as more messages are coming in. And I couldn't figure out how to delete the message on Schoology from my phone. Actually, I don't think you can. So I couldn't do it because I wanted people to stop responding. I started feeling badly about the fact that more people wanted these bikes and I only had 2 to give away. And so I thought about that Saturday and all day Sunday. And I told the administrative team this morning, the ones that I met with, that if there's a kid in Fairview that wants a bicycle, we're going to make sure they get one. And whether it's a new bike or a used bike, one way or another, we're going to make sure that they get one. And so I mentioned that to a few people today, and you can't imagine the outpouring already of people emailing me and calling me and texting me and saying, what can I do to help you out with that project? So I got a hold of my Fairview Cares committee this afternoon, and we actually have scheduled a meeting for tomorrow afternoon. and we're going to launch a bike drive and make sure that every kid in Fairview who doesn't have a bike has a bike this summer. That we just think that's a given. I think that's a given for any child to have a bicycle in the summer. So we're going to make sure that happens. We have some people on board who are going to help us to repair and maybe fix up any bikes that we get in that are in need of that and refurbish them. And then we're going to use some Fairview Cares money and possibly some student support money to go out and buy the rest. So look for news on that. One of our teachers called me today and said, if you just tell every teacher, every employee in the district, 250 employees, to find a bike at a yard sale over the next 2 months, you'll probably get 250 bikes. And I never really thought of that. So we're going to do that. We're going to encourage folks to look in their garage, look in, wherever they have some old bikes lying around, and we're going to collect them and distribute them and then supplement them with some new ones as well. So look for that over the next couple of weeks. And Ed can tell you that we are going to extend our school lunch program through the summer. That's the plan, as long as we can get employees to do that. And we're thinking about, Ed had a great idea of incentivizing those folks. And we're going to talk to the association, the Support Staff Association, about doing that, maybe enhancing some pay over the summer for those folks who don't typically work, much like Wegmans and some of the other essential organizations have done over the last couple of months with wages, to get people in here so that they can prepare the lunch for families who need them. And it's more families. It's more families than you can imagine. Not only the students on the free and reduced lunch list who are coming in for those meals, and not so much as maybe the financial need, but just the convenience of having a lunch prepared for their kiddos when they're trying to work and balance life and kids and school and everything at the same time. So we are happy that we can do that, and our plan is to continue that through the summer and help out as many families as we can. Questions for me or any of the administrators that we have on tonight?
Eric, this is Fran. That's a great idea with the bikes. So there is a program, the Sisters of St. Joseph run a program where kids go and learn how to work on bikes and fix them, and then they can keep the one that they fix.
Oh, that's neat.
And so I don't know if there's something that maybe some way to team up with them, because they get huge donations of bikes through their
Fran, I might be saying this organization wrong, but I think it's called the Erie Community Outreach Program. I think that's what it's called. It was one of our Fairview Cares sponsor organizations. But we have a teacher, Steve Sanford, who works closely with that organization, and he wants to partner with us as well and come in. And he's kind of a handyman, jack of all trades, if you will. And he wants to come in and fix up the bicycles and refurbish them. And then we had another community member, one that most of you probably know, Mr. Raddick, reached out today and said that he'd be willing to lend his expertise in that as well. So we're going to take advantage of that. He knows his stuff when it comes to bikes, and we're going to hit him up for it. So the more the better, and hopefully we have one in every driveway.
Good.
Anything else for me?
Thank you, Dr. Kincaid. Secretary's report, Mrs. Jones, anything tonight?
I do not have anything, no.
Thank you. Moving on to board remarks. Anyone wish to present any remarks from the board?
I just want to tell everybody, go ahead. Okay, you can go first, Kelly. It's okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Just thank you all for what you've done over the last couple of weeks. Everybody in the schools, I wish you a great, strong end of the year. This isn't how anybody thought you'd end the year. You thought you'd be transitioning kids and doing some rather fun things that you usually do at the end of the year, and it's different. But it's going to be great, and you're almost there. And by the time we have our next board meeting, the school year will be over. So,
anyone else?
Alan, this is Kelly.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Sorry, I just did a bunch of runs here while we were speaking, and looks like there's an awful lot of universities who donate to the parks and recs of their communities. Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Columbia, Dartmouth. And I'm looking at Barron and Gannon's now advertising that they're the local university for staying here next year. That might be somewhere we could get money for them.
Thank you, Kelly. Anyone else?
Just a quick question. There was a comment made about iPads and the students keeping those. Is that across the district, or is that just limited to the elementary students?
David, we initially, when we talked about that initially as an administrative team, we talked primarily about high school students and possibly middle school students keeping them. We were going to collect the elementary school students, but the more we discussed it and thought it through, I think it might have been our IT department who said, if we get into a situation where we can't come back, we're going to have to redistribute all of those, and that's going to be a real challenge in and of itself. So the decision was made to allow all students K through 11 to hold onto those iPads until the school year. The seniors returned theirs this week.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
This is Fran. I just want to say I cannot wait to see this video of graduation. The more I hear about it, the more excited I am, and I just can't wait to see the finished product. Good job.
Hi, this is Eric. I would like to say something about the iPads too, but my question has more to do with the library functions maybe than some of the other things. And I was just thinking that as an Apple distinguished school, I wondered if Apple offers some sort of a library resource on their application called iBooks, where Fairview as a school might be able to say, all right, we want all these books to be available to our students on their iPads. I just I didn't see that on my kids' iPads, but I haven't looked very hard. Is that something that is available?
I can take some of that question, I think, Eric. So it's not through iBooks, but our Follett system has the capability. That's our library system, sorry. For some titles to be checked out online. That would be for middle school and high school. And then our elementary school uses, Ben or Julie, you can help me, an online library of books.
Epic.
That's it. So pertaining to, to middle school and high school students, there are some titles to check out online through Follett, and all the kids have Follett app on their iPad, but it's definitely an area that we would have to work on building up a little bit.
Okay, thanks. I was hoping that Apple would push on that a little bit too.
Yeah, we used one iBook at one point for a textbook, and it wasn't the easiest thing in the world to distribute to kids. So.
Okay. Well, I was just in the name of trying to find things to do that are constructive on the computer, perhaps throughout the summer. Anything I could do to engage the kids in activities that are maybe a little more studious than video games was sort of what I had in mind.
Right.
Any other board member wish to make remarks this evening? Okay, well, thank you all for joining us this evening. I just wanted to reiterate the comments I made before we started. I had the opportunity to experience graduation this evening just before we convened these meetings. And I have to tell you, it was very special. It was very meaningful. It filled the bill as publicized by Dr. Lane, Dr. Kincaid, and all the others. And Melania, my graduating senior, wanted me to share with the board and the rest of you that it was absolutely awesome. So from her perspective, she had a wonderful experience. And that's what matters, doesn't it? So thank you all for that. Thank you for continuing to work hard, and thank you to our board members who are continuing to represent us so well and have these very healthy discussions when it comes to matters of importance to our community. Stay safe, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Good night, everyone. Good night.
We're adjourned. We're adjourned.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Brandon. What's his last name? Brandon. Hillary Nordholm.